Welcome, dear listener. Tonight we travel not only across time, but across the quiet spaces between fear and understanding, between the flicker of superstition and the slow, warm glow of science. We will wander softly through ancient worlds, past smoky hearths and darkened temples, through quiet medieval villages, and into gently humming laboratories. Along the way, we'll meet two strange companions: fever, the old heat of mystery, fear, and illness, and sparks, the curious little fires that once lit the imagination before they ever lit a lamp. Let your thoughts slow, let your breath grow calm, and let us begin. In the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and early India, people did not understand fever as we do now. To them, it was not merely a symptom, it was a signal from another realm. A rise in body heat was not just an ailment, it was punishment or possession. Spirits, gods, demons, they all had their role to play in the invisible theater of illness. Imagine a clay hut under the hot Mesopotamian sun. The walls are cool to the touch, but inside lies a child, his brow damp with sweat. His family doesn't reach for a thermometer. They reach for incense, for chants, for clay tablets etched with prayers. They whisper softly to the goddess Gula, protector of health, as the child's fever rages like a fire beneath the skin. Nearby, another fire flickers, this one in the hearth, where a pot of herbs simmers. The flames dance gently, just like the sparks that leap in the minds of early healers. To them, the line between illness and energy, between fever and fire, was thin and shimmering like the desert heat. In ancient Egypt, fever was explained through the concept of imbalance. The body, like the Nile, must flow in harmony. If it boiled too hot, it was not science that would cool it, but ritual and prayer. Priests and physicians were often the same. They offered poultices and incantations, guided not by microscopes, but by scrolls, stars, and dreams. As for sparks, the flickering light of fire was sacred. It was used in ceremonies, in the lighting of oil lamps before statues of gods. It was not yet electricity, it was mystery, contained. And so, in these early civilizations, fever was fearsome, fire was divine. Sparks were whispers of something powerful, but not yet understood. Drift with that thought like smoke rising from a quiet brazier. And let us continue. The Middle Ages arrived like a mist rolling in, and with it came centuries of silence, superstition, and shadowed thought. In the stone-built villages of medieval Europe, fever was a curse, a punishment for sin, or worse, a sign of possession. People feared the heat rising in their loved ones' bodies, but they did not fear germs, for those would not be discovered for hundreds of years. Instead, they feared the miasma, bad air, believed to drift through towns, carrying death on its invisible wings. The sick were often isolated, but not for sanitation. They were sent away because their fevers frightened the soul. In drafty monasteries, monks prayed over the sick. They murmured Latin verses beside beds of sweat-soaked straw. Sometimes the afflicted were bled, a cold blade to relieve hot blood. The logic was flawed, but the intent often sincere. In this age, sparks still lived only in fire. There was no controlled electricity, no wires, no lights. But sparks had meaning. They came from blacksmiths' forges, from flint stones struck to light a candle. They were small moments of magic, practical but potent. Children believed that a spark seen at night might be a soul escaping the body, that a fevered dream was a message from God or the devil. In kitchens, women boiled willow bark in quiet desperation. They didn't know it contained salicin, a compound that would one day become aspirin. They only knew it might ease the burning inside a loved one. And so the night passed, with fevered moans, flickering tallow candles, and whispered prayers into the wood smoke. Let the sparks fade now. Let the bells of the monastery toll softly in your mind as we journey on. When the plague came, it arrived not with drama, but with silence and a rising heat. The Black Death, the greatest killer of the 14th century, tore through cities and villages alike. Fever was now not just feared, it was expected. People knew little of bacteria. Instead, they blamed comets in the sky, witches in the woods, and divine wrath. In some towns, the sick were sealed into their homes. In others, entire neighborhoods were burned, in the belief that fire could purify, and in a strange way, it could. Sparks, once symbols of daily life, became tools of cleansing. Torches lit plague pits. Funeral pyres smoldered quietly on the edges of towns. Yet among the ash, some sparks of reason glowed. Doctors began to notice patterns. They kept crude records. They began to wonder, could disease spread from person to person? Though wrapped in bird-like masks and leather robes, they carried not just superstition, but the early embers of observation. Fever still frightened, but slowly, ever so slowly, the world was preparing to understand. Let your mind rest here in the flickering glow of possibility. As we step into the light, the age of enlightenment arrived not as a blaze, but as a gentle sunrise. Scholars like Galileo, Newton, and later Franklin began to study the world not through prayer, but through reason. Fever became a subject of study. No longer only a curse, it was seen as a bodily reaction, a clue. Thermometers were invented, first filled with alcohol, then mercury. Now, for the first time, heat could be measured. And sparks. Sparks became more than fire. Benjamin Franklin flew a kite into a stormy sky, and, with trembling hands, drew lightning to his key. He proved that sparks were electricity. This was no longer magic. It was energy, it was power, and it would light the world. In quiet laboratories, men and women in long coats watched as glass jars crackled with static. They wrote careful notes, each spark a syllable in the new language of science. Fever and fire still existed, but their meaning was changing. No longer threats from another world, they were becoming part of this one. And still, the world spun gently onward, toward the soft hum of modernity. By the 19th century, hospitals were changing. Clean sheets, gloved hands, charts and thermometers. Fever, once feared as a ghost, was now a symptom to be treated. With rest, with medicine, with care. And sparks? They now lit lamps, powered trams, spoke across wires. Electricity became the heartbeat of cities. Homes glowed after sunset. Light no longer danced only on fire's edge. It poured from bulbs and filaments. Still, the old superstitions did not vanish. Some clung quietly in the corners, tales told to children, worries whispered behind science's back. But the world had changed. Now, when a child grew hot with fever, a parent reached for a thermometer, not a talisman. Now, when sparks danced, they powered radios, charged books on screens, lit quiet bedrooms like yours, where you now drift. So rest, dear listener. The fevers have passed. The sparks are safe. You are wrapped in warmth, not of fire, but of knowledge, not of magic, but of quiet, glowing light. Sleep now. History holds you gently. Good night.